What's up, everyone? It's good to be back here podcasting to you all today on Cinematic Reviews. I honestly truly miss this. I love talking about movies. I love just watching movies. It's such an awesome art form to just sit back, watch, observe, and just dissect and talk with your friends and family. It's part of the reason why I did this podcast in the beginning. I unfortunately got burnt out, if I'm being honest with you all, in Phase 1. But I'm back today for Phase 2 of Cinematic Reviews, and I am super excited about it all. I got a new episode layout coming for you. New movies, new shows, new sound bites. It's going to be awesome. I even have some guests in the schedule lined up, so that is going to be really exciting. And something very new to the podcast. If you are a listener from Phase 1, I did not have any guests on there, but now I finally do have a scheduled list of guests to come on the show periodically, including the Deadpool movie, which is coming out this next week, which I'm super excited for. And that'll be a big Marvel episode, and I will have a couple guests on joining me for that. But for today's episode, we have a really fun lineup for you today. I'm going to do some news and reactions to a couple of summer's biggest shows. You may have heard of The Boys. They just wrapped up season 4. And then the first season of The Acolyte, which is the newest Star Wars project to be released by Disney. I'll give my reactions to both of those. As well as we just recently got some behind-the-scenes photos from James Gunn's new Superman film, which is kicking off the new DCU for Warner Brothers. And I'm going to give my thoughts on all of that as well. So let's kick it off today with some news and reactions. So like I said, first up we have James Gunn's Superman film that is coming out next summer on July 11th, 2025. It was previously titled Superman Legacy, but a few months ago James Gunn did chop off the subtitle for it and is now just being named Superman. This is starring, I believe, David Cornsweet. I am not familiar with him, and I apologize if I screwed up his last name there. He is an actor that I'm honestly very new to. Let me pull up his IMDb here. He's been in some projects, but none that I am too familiar with, so I'm super excited to see his portrayal as Clark Kent / Kal-El himself. A name that I do recognize is Mr. Nicholas Hoult. He is playing Lex Luthor in the film. You may remember his name being linked to the X-Men films done by Fox. He played Beast in that universe, along with some other ones too. We got quite a list of characters for this film, and that's one of my biggest concerns, is that James Gunn is trying to set up this whole universe with this first Superman film and trying to kick off the Justice League. Because looking at the cast list here, we've already got Nathan Fillion joining in as Guy Gardner, who is one of the Green Lanterns, as well as Frank Grillo, who I absolutely love. I'm so glad he's going to be in the DC universe as Rick Flag Sr. So we must be getting some kind of generational Rick Flag storyline going on there. We also have Lois Lane, of course. You can't have Clark Kent without Lois Lane. Rachel Brosnan, again, another actor that I am not familiar with, so I butchered that name. But she has been in a few things that I have seen. I believe she was in House of Cards, so maybe I am a little more familiar with her than I originally thought. So I'm super excited to see her portrayal of Lois Lane. We have Wendell Pierce on this list, as well as Perry White. You probably recognized him from the Jack Ryan show on Amazon Prime. He was his John Krasinski's buddy in that one with the CIA, I believe. So I'm looking at the cast list alone. I'm pretty excited for it. With these set photos, which has been the biggest news this summer, we did get that first image with David as Superman in the Superman suit that appears to be somewhat damaged. And I remember when this photo dropped, and I can't remember exactly. I think this was back in maybe April or May when this first photo dropped. Um, it's just him sitting in the chair, putting his old boots on, which is pretty. It's an interesting pose to have our first look at what James Gunn is going for Superman. I remember the social media comments and all that just butchered the heck out of this photo with it. But aside from the choice position of him, I do like the coloring of the suit. I'm not exactly on board with the look of it with the patterning and all that. So I'm hoping maybe post production wise, maybe Gunn plans on kind of tooling with the patterns on it with software or something. I don't know. I'm just at first glance I wasn't exactly on board with the overall look of the suit. I do like the coloring. The symbol itself looks very very comic booky. I believe it's one of the Superman storylines of Kingdom Come. Very similar, if not a carbon copy of that logo on there. So I thought that was a really interesting choice for Gunn to decide on. And then we've seen a few other sort of behind-the-scenes photos of Superman kind of saving a few citizens of Metropolis. I remember one in particular. It looked like some kind of park or gathering center of Metropolis, and he was trying to hold up some piece of structure from falling onto a nearby citizen. So I think that's pretty cool. Some other photos shows the back of the cape, which was a big thing too, was that Gunn has decided to put the yellow Superman symbol back on the cape like we saw in the older Superman films with Christopher Reeves, where he had the yellow symbol on the red cape. And so that is being brought back, which is a really cool idea. Henry Cavill, I believe, did not have the yellow symbol on it. Zack Snyder tried to stay away from that and went with just a solid red. So that's really cool. He is wearing, in a couple of photos, also the classic red undies along with the yellow belt. So I thought that was a really interesting choice to bring that back as well. Overall, though, I'm pretty impressed so far with some of the behind-the-scenes stuff that we've been seeing from Gunn. It seems like he is going for a very comic booky yet lighthearted, and probably knowing Gunn with the Guardians movies and the Suicide Squad movie that he did, with a lot of humor in there and a lot of hope and a lot of fun. So that's really cool. It's really looking like the opposite of what Snyder did, where he went more of a dark and melancholy style to his Superman with Henry Cavill. So this looks a little more very comic booky and family friendly. So I'm really curious to see what James Gunn has to bring to the Superman lore. Next, I want to talk about probably the show I was most excited for this year, and that was season 4 of The Boys, which you can watch on Amazon Prime. I've been in love with this show since it first began back in 2019. This season was wild, though. We went very, very political with this season, which, no surprise, right now we are currently in an election year. So it was sitting right there in the producers' faces that they should do an election style season 4, and with seasons 1 through 3, I mean, it was kind of leading up to this point anyways, but it's really cool that we happen to get season 4 this year in particular because of the big election that is going on right now in our country. But like I said, this season 4 is probably the most wild and just crazy seasons that they have done so far. It was previously announced, I want to say back in June, that season 5 will be the final season of the show. At least in this main storyline, we do have Gen V going on right now. I've only seen maybe half of that season 1. But I gotta imagine they're gonna have a plan to kind of spread out this universe, similar to what DC and Marvel do with their heroes. But this main story, is really really cool, and it's really nice to know that we're gonna get 5 really solid seasons instead of kind of stretching this out, because we really, honestly, with the story that they're trying to tell with these first few seasons, we don't really need 10 or 12 seasons of the show. We really only need 4, 5, 6 solid seasons, similar to like shows like Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones. They were very contained and they knew the story they wanted to tell, and in the length of time that they wanted to. They didn't go the Walking Dead route, which I always criticize that they did. They ended up doing like 11 seasons, which is probably half of what they should have did. They probably should have stopped at like 6 seasons with that show also. So that's really really good to know that they just came up already and said, hey, we're going to end this show with 5 seasons. That way you can get really, really solid story and character development through this. The big kind of central plot, not to spoil too much of it, in case you haven't seen it yet, basically Homelander is out for the White House. He wants to control the entire country, basically, and his way of doing it is to get the candidate that he can control the most in the White House. Well, that happens to be not the president himself, Bobby Singer, who is on this really big campaign on eliminating soups forever. He is actually backing his vice president, which he has kind of implanted into his campaign, and that she would take over as president once the, whatever it is that Homelander has planned, which was a wild storyline. But what really made this show interesting, in this season in particular, is all the violence and the insane effects that they decided to do. I mean, we get certain male appendages beamed off by Homelander's heat vision. We get him ripping people in half. We get people exploding in front of Huey. It's a wild, wild season. It's the wildest one that they have yet, and I'm really curious to see if they kind of tone that back a bit for season 5, or they just go, hey, we went really wild with season 4. Let's go out with a bang with season 5 and just make it the wildest season possible. And that kind of seems the route that they're going, because as I kind of rewatch the show, you kind of get a little bit more wild and crazy as the seasons go by, and that, I guess, is the result that we get with season 4. Is like, this is where the show is at right now. We are going to just make this completely insane and wild, and I had a lot of fun with this show. In season 4 in particular, it's one of my favorite seasons so far this year. The next project I want to kind of talk about and go over my thoughts with is one that I wasn't really extremely excited about, and that's on the Disney side with their newest Star Wars project, The Acolyte. This was a very interesting show to watch, not just the show itself, but kind of the fan reactions that went along with it every week. This show, you either love this show or you absolutely hate this show. There is really no middle ground with this one. I am more on the side of liking it now. At the very beginning of it, I was not into this show at all. The first, I want to say, 3 episodes for sure. I think maybe even episode 4 didn't quite get me into it. And it was mainly because of the story that they were trying to tell and the acting and the writing and all of that. Now, the action is really what I got to imagine is what they were going for with this show. They really tried to bring in, the kung fu and the hand-to-hand combat with the Jedi fighting. They did use lightsabers because, this is Star Wars we're talking about. You have to have lightsabers in it. I don't care what anybody else says. I know Andor was an awesome show and that didn't have any lightsabers in it, but, when it comes to Star Wars, the first thought is lightsabers. So, yes, there is some wild lightsaber fighting in here. It's probably, honestly, the best that I've seen. It blew my mind, the different things that they could do with the lightsaber in this show as far as choreography goes. Some of the main characters in here, we have Soul, who is kind of leading this Jedi crusade through this whole season. We have the new, I guess, quote unquote, Star Wars twins coming here with May and Osha, who is played by the same actress, I believe. They kind of did some camera work with her in order to kind of give the portrayal of twins, but it was acted by the same actor, which was really, really cool. We get some more Daphne Keane, who has been in a lot of Star Wars stuff. You know, she played Little Ahsoka. Now she plays a Padawan Jackie in this show, and she was fantastic. I really love her. We get Carrie-Anne Moss, who you probably remember her from The Matrix as Trinity, which makes a lot of sense. They did a lot of... This was very much... The best way I can describe it is like The Matrix of the Star Wars universe. They really tried to do a lot of hand-to-hand combat stuff. And then once the lightsabers were introduced more, I want to say episode 5-ish is when they start, throwing out these lightsabers. It was really, really cool to see what they were able to do from a choreography standpoint with the show. Now, the story itself is not the greatest. I wasn't, I tuned in every week for this show. It was mainly just for the action, I'm going to be honest. The plot did not grab my attention one bit. The acting was honestly kind of poor from my perspective. It's a lot of actors who have probably never done a whole lot of stuff aside from, Carrie-Anne Moss, who's been a really big action icon. Daphne Keane, of course, is really, really good, but she doesn't get a whole lot of speaking roles. She's more introduced in a lot of the action sequences for her. As far as the actress that plays the Osha and May, Amandla Stenberg, she got better as the season went on, I think, as more of the story kind of unveiled itself and some of the twists came through. I noticed her acting and her character being a little bit more stronger at overall. Now, the ending of season 1 really indicates that there will be a season 2. I don't know if they have officially announced a season 2 of The Acolyte, but I gotta imagine the way that they set that final episode up, that confirmation will be coming very, very soon if it hasn't been announced yet. And it doesn't look like they have announced it yet. My guess is they're probably going to have to figure out budgets and scheduling with some of these other ones, because we do have those 3 Star Wars movies coming out. We have Andor Season 2 finally coming out, so I'm sure there's a lot of scheduling and budgets to move around when it comes to Season 2, which I will probably watch. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I've covered the movies on this podcast before, so I'm definitely going to tune in for it. I hope it's better than this first season. I wasn't, like I said, too impressed with this first season. I started to like it more as the season went on, as we got to know these characters a little bit more, and the plot and some of the twists started happening. You start to kind of get into the story more, and and I'm at the point now where I'm just kind of curious to see how this story and this show plays out. I'm not attached to any of the characters, even though, spoiler alert, most of these characters die because they kind of... And another one of my big negatives for this show is that it kind of breaks canon a bit, and they kind of back themselves into a corner with this show, because this is definitely the oldest of live action that we've ever gotten. We've gotten video games and comics in the High Republic era, which this is where this takes place, is the High Republic side of Star Wars. We haven't had any live action for this, so they're kind of making this up as they go, and most of the time that doesn't work out very well in the end. But we'll see. It sounds like they are very interested in exploring this side of the Star Wars universe, which is really, really cool, because I do love this area of the Star Wars lore. I was a big fan of the Old Republic games back in the day, and I got a lot of vibes from that. So I'm hoping we get some more in this era as far as Star Wars content. You know, we got Plagueis coming. If you didn't know, that shot at the end of the season with that guy kind of poking his head out, watching Osha and her new master, that was Darth Plagueis, you know, the master of Darth Sidious, who kind of, you know, remember in Revenge of the Sith, you know, Palpatine speaks to Anakin about do you know the tale of Darth Plagueis the Wise? Well, that was that guy. That is the famous Darth Plagueis that we've been all hearing about. And so it looks like we're probably going to get some Plagueis in Season 2, along with a very fan favorite character, Yoda, who we got to see for like 2 seconds in this season. And that was one of my other big negatives, is that we don't really get any reference to any other Jedi that we've ever seen before. You know, Yoda is in this era, and the whole season you're wondering, like, where the heck is Yoda? And we finally get to see him for about 2 seconds at the end. It's the very, very last shot of the series, and it's in the back of his head. So, I mean, I think that was a poor decision also to kind of just exclude him altogether. But it looks like we're going to get more of him in Season 2, which is awesome. But yeah, overall, this is definitely one of my least favorite of the Star Wars content so far, which is really, really upsetting and kind of a bummer, because, like I said, you know, the action is one of the best in the whole universe right now, and I love this era of the Star Wars. So it's a real bummer that this show just didn't grasp my attention or my love for it as some of the other ones. You know, like my brother loves this show. I have a bunch of coworkers who love this show, and good for them. You know, they don't, you know, they're not critiquing it as hard as I am. That's just my curse that I gotta bear, where I'm watching a show or a movie. You know, I put on my reviewer hat and I kind of get critical with it. And Star Wars in particular, it's because I love this universe so much. It was Star Wars and it was Indiana Jones growing up for me. You know, I've been very, very critical of these newer Indiana Jones movies, and I'm very, very critical of these new Star Wars contents because I love the universe so much, and it's part of my childhood. So I hope Star Wars starts to get a little better, because I was not impressed with the Acolyte overall. It did, however, get better towards the end, but that doesn't make a great show in my book. It's got to be good from the beginning, middle, and end. You know, it's got to build up into something great, and this just didn't do it for me. But hey, I'm just one of many fans of Star Wars, and from what I understand, it was a very, I wouldn't say a successful show. It wasn't a complete bomb from what I understand. You know, there is a large fan base that absolutely loved this show, but there is also a large percentage of the fan base that didn't. So I guess we will see what the future brings for the Acolyte and the Star Wars, the Disney side of Star Wars in general. So with that, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll get into our featured film, Twisters.
Guys, whatever's in there, it's big and it's moving fast. Drive. Go, go, go! Guys, you gotta get out of here. Do you hear me? It's Tyler Owens. Calls himself a tornado wrangler. If you feel it, chase it! I said if you feel it, chase it! All right, here we go. Oh, she's perfect!
She's gorgeous!
You thought you could destroy a tornado.
We never had a chance.
You want one? You don't face your fears. You ride them. got it? Nope.
So, Twisters was one of my most anticipated films of not only the summer, but of this whole year of 2024. And it did not disappoint. I enjoyed this film a lot. It came out this past Friday, and it looks to be on track to make a decent amount of money at the box office. I've been kind of looking through the reviews this weekend, and they all seem pretty positive for the most part. I think the biggest gripe I've seen so far with these reviews is the lack of kind of overall story, which a movie like this, you don't really need a really polarizing story. If you are familiar with the original film Twister, which I grew up watching over and over again, that was a pretty simple plot. They were simply chasing these tornadoes in order to get scientific data to prevent these, or at least give people a chance to escape their towns in that area of a tornado. Now with this new Twister film, this turns out to be more about kind of controlling the tornado and then eventually destroying it, which is a wild thing to even discuss. The fact that they are trying to disrupt or destroy tornadoes is freaking bonkers to my mind, because I honestly never even thought of this to be a plot in a tornado movie, to like actually destroy a tornado or to prevent it from, hitting a small town. We're all usually talking about how, we can maybe increase the alarm systems in towns or somehow create a longer length of time for evacuation. I guess the fact of actually destroying the tornado before it even hits a town is a thought that maybe even a lot of people like myself didn't even discuss. So that's one of the reasons that I love this movie so much, is just the fact that they kind of came with their own storyline for this, along with a great cast. Glenn Powell, who I think everyone's gotten to pretty much know now. He's been in a lot of different movies, like he did some rom-coms. The Hitman for Netflix was a pretty popular movie, along with his rom-com with Sydney Sweeney, Anyone But You, which I wasn't a huge fan of. I think we're going to get a movie with these two huge stars eventually, and that ends up being this rom-com, Anyone But You. I mean, it wasn't a horrible film. He was pretty good in it, and so was Sydney Sweeney, who I love from Euphoria. Now, the big movie that really kind of, catapulted Glenn Powell's career was his character Hangman in Top Gun Maverick with Tom Cruise. That is a character that was almost molded to be this generation's Iceman, which he embodied really, really well. And that kind of ties in with his character in Twisters, which he plays a character named Tyler Owens, who is the quote-unquote tornado wrangler, this YouTube star that is chasing down these tornadoes and, as his name suggests, wrangle the tornadoes. He's got his own crew, very similar to the original movie with Helen Hunt's Joe. They're kind of the, mainly focusing on the tornadoes themselves and not so much, making money or, having the high-tech, equipment that we see. If you remember from the original movie, Dr. Jonas, who was played by Carrie Elwes, who was the, the cocky, very invested company going up against Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt in that one. Now, the roles are kind of not really reversed, but they kind of have the same setup in the sequel with, we have, like I said, Glenn Powell's group, who's kind of the Helen Hunt group, where they're, they have their own style of equipment, but it's not like this high-tech stuff that we see Kate's group originally with her friend Javi, who they are more or less the Dr. Jonas of the film, at least in the first part. If you've seen the film, you know what I mean, where Kate kind of realizes that Javi and his team called Stormpar, they are more on the side of, getting investors, making money, and it turns out that his company that he is a part of and helped kind of build up is in this kind of shady buying up land from these people affected by tornadoes, which is a really disgusting thing to do, if you ask me. And I thought that was a very, very powerful, kind of subplot in this film. So that kind of in turn puts Kate back on Tyler's team, which is, like I said, kind of the Helen Hunt version of this movie, which was really cool to see. Now, my theory with the Tyler character, it doesn't. They don't actually say this in the film, but it's kind of something that I've been thinking about after watching this film. I think Tyler has to be related to Helen Hunt's Joe and Bill Paxton's Bill in some capacity. Now, is that their son? Is that maybe he's referred to at one point in the film kind of hanging out with his aunt for a lot of it, and maybe Joe was his aunt, or maybe it was in fact his mother. I guess they didn't really come out and make a huge connection between this movie and the next movie, or I could be completely wrong and it's not related at all. But the way he kind of chases down tornadoes and the way he's able to like kind of feel when a tornado's coming, when is it shifting and all that, that kind of goes hand in hand with kind of how Bill Paxton's character was able to kind of just feel the weather change and which direction tornadoes are going. But at the same time, which really threw me off was that Kate, her character, is also able to do the same thing. So my original thought when I was sitting in the theater watching this, I was like, oh, well, maybe the connection is Kate. Turns out that's not really the case, because her mother, played by Maura Tierney, she must be a brand new character in this, because I don't ever remember a character being called Kathy in the original Twister movie. That is her mother's name. So I'm really sticking to this theory that Glenn Powell's got to be the connection between Twisters. Now, I could be totally wrong. It could be zero connections character-wise to them, and maybe they just like, hey, let's just make a sequel about Storm Chasers that doesn't really connect directly to the characters that we fell in love with in the first film. But anyways, that didn't change my view at all. That's just kind of one of the theories I was coming up with. I did, like I said, really, really love this movie. I think the special effects that they did with the tornadoes and all the storm stuff was really top-notch, along with the sound effects. If you've listened to this podcast before, the theater in my town, we have one of those big ultra screens with the Adobe sound systems to it. And this movie was the perfect film to watch on that screen. We get the big, loud thunder cracking and the winds and tornadoes behind us with the sounds. The picture was beautiful with the special effects and all that on the ultra screen. So this is really a movie that you're going to want to see on the biggest and loudest screen possible. I would have loved to see this in IMAX, but my town, unfortunately, doesn't have an IMAX theater. So our best thing is the ultra screen that Marcus Theaters has for us. But yeah, this is really good. The one thing I did notice, now I'm not a big country music guy, but they really did hammer that country music hard in this film. At some points it was a little bit overpowering, but that's just me. Like I said, I'm not a huge country music guy, but they really did, I guess, and I understand why they did it. They wanted to create, the old Midwest vibe with Oklahoma and all that stuff. But I think maybe they could have, turned it down a bit with the music and kind of just focused more on the, the sound of the tornadoes and the weather and all that. But it's really good to have music. I remember the original Twister, there was a couple of good kind of music beats to it, but that film in particular really did focus on just the sound of the storm and not necessarily the music of the film. But I understand, it's 2024. We all love music. Music is a big part of creating this atmosphere of a film. But at points, I did find that the music was a bit too overwhelming, and it kind of took us out of the film. We're more focused on the song and not the actual film itself. But I still really, really enjoyed it, as I keep saying. Now, do we get another Twister film? I mean, I hope so. Like I said, this is tracking to be pretty successful financially. Let me pull up the numbers here. So far, it's estimated to make about 150 to 160 $1 million this weekend worldwide, which is that would be incredibly awesome if it did hit that 160, 150 mark. I think right now it's probably going to hit maybe 140. I think it's sitting at 123 right now. The budget was about 155. So maybe it could, if it's lucky, it would make its money back in just this first weekend alone. I don't think it's going to quite hit that, but it's still really, really good. In just the U.S. and Canada this weekend, it made almost 81 million, which is really, really good for an opening weekend. And it's a really, really short film too. It's only 2 hours. It kind of breezes by fast, no pun intended. But it is a pretty, good in and out storm film. And I'll talk about this more when I get to the rankings, but I do really love a good storm film, especially tornadoes. I live in the Midwest, North Dakota. We don't get as many tornadoes here like we used to. It's been more, Kansas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, and in Iowa. We don't really get as many as we do up here. Now that I say that, I probably jinxed it, so sorry to my home state if I did jinx that. But no, honestly, I don't think I've seen a tornado here since I was a kid. A good maybe 20 years ago was probably the last time I remember a tornado actually touching down in my town here in North Dakota. Now, I did, experience a few tornadoes in Kansas when I lived down there. I remember one instance in particular. We were living in this kind of trailer park section at the time, and we had to run across the street to this apartment complex and go down to their laundry machine area, and we kind of all just sat down there with these people we did not know for a good length of time while a tornado was kind of passing through the town that we lived in Kansas. So that was probably my earliest experience that I've ever had with a tornado. I've always been fascinated with tornadoes, and that's part of the reason why Twisters is one of the movies I watched, on repeat as a kid over and over again. I can basically recite that movie from start to finish because I've seen it so many times. And so I'm touching on rankings a little bit here, but it's going to be tough for this sequel to beat that original film because I think it's such a perfect film. But the CGI in this one, Twisters, the sequel, was really top-notch. It almost had Into the Storm vibes, which I really, really like. If you've seen that film, that was kind of our first glance at a tornado film with these new special effects that we're getting from Hollywood. And that was really cool in particular also because that was all first person. We were seeing, it was that first footage, a found footage type of thing with like Blair Witch and Chronicle and all those. So that was a really cool device to use in a tornado movie. And they didn't really need to replicate that in this. They kind of had the whole YouTube angle because YouTube is such a huge part of our culture now. And that was a really cool thing to kind of like throw us into the modern world on how storm chasers would get the word out, which is YouTube. I've been a part of a lot of, tornado watching groups on Reddit and YouTube. And so that was really cool to see too, kind of how these storm chasers use YouTube more than they do like actual weather services. And so I think that's kind of where the future is going to hold with these storms, is people are going to start kind of feeding their footage and experiences through YouTube rather than the Weather Channel, which seems to be not as a big part in storm chasing anymore. So that's really fascinating also to kind of see that turn in this movie as well, because Kate at the beginning is a storm chaser herself. She's studying weather patterns and tornado patterns to kind of use her theories to disrupt or destroy tornadoes in a sense. And she unfortunately pays the ultimate price in trying to get grant money and get her theory out there to the world, because she loses 3 of her friends, one being her boyfriend at the time, So she kind of puts the storm chaser hat down and joins the National Weather Service as her, next step in her career. Well, she ends up being pulled back in by one of her other friends in that storm chaser group. Javi, who I mentioned, runs this storm chasing company. And so she's kind of thrown back into that storm chasing world and realizes that this is the way to get her theory out there, is to actually chase them instead of going through the National Weather Service. It was a really cool character arc for her in particular. And then we also see Tyler kind of form a relationship with her throughout the film and kind of not necessarily change who he is, but kind of show us that he isn't just this cocky tornado wrangler that he is. He actually has his own experiences, and he's very, very skilled in weather patterns and all that stuff too. So, yeah, I was really, really, really impressed with this film, and I can't wait to own it and watch it over and over again, and with a double feature with Twister and Twisters. So I'm really, really excited for everyone else who hasn't, unfortunately, seen this film to go out and see it, or wait till it comes to a streaming service or like iTunes or Vudu for you to own. Because I know that the pandemic still has got some people kind of scared of theaters, and I totally respect that. But this is really a film that you should see once in the theater on the biggest screen with the biggest sound possible. So, yeah, I was really, really impressed with it, and I can't wait to watch it again. So, to kind of switch gears a little bit, let's dive into the rankings and see where I put this with the national disaster movies that I have listed, and then the big fight, Twister versus Twisters. So let me pull up my current list of national disaster films. Now, this was kind of tough because it really depends on your definition of a natural disaster movie or disaster movie. I went with more disaster movies to kind of shrink the broadness of that category. So I went with natural disasters. These include films with earthquakes, tornadoes, any kind of storm that could happen in reality. And no disaster movie, the parody is not on here. So for any of you that is kind of bummed out, I'm sorry. For the life of me, I could not put that parody movie, disaster movie, on here. I do really like that movie. I actually did watch it to kind of prep for this, and I thought that those parody films have definitely aged poorly. But I do really, really enjoy that one. But anyways, I digress. So here is my current listings, rankings for the national disasters. I'm going to go from the top down. So my number one is San Andreas. If you're not familiar with that, that is the Dwayne Johnson blockbuster about the earthquakes that hits the San Andreas Fault in California. Absolutely love that film. It's a movie that my entire family loves watching together. So that has got to be my number one right now. Second, I have The Impossible, which is based on the real life story of the tsunami that hit on the coast of Thailand. This film, if you're not familiar with it, I'll kind of run through it here real quick. It stars Ewan McGregor, Naomi Watts, a very, very young Tom Holland. If my memory serves me right, this is Tom Holland's very first film that he was a part of. It's a very, very emotional and very beautiful film about a family being separated by the tsunami and then eventually finding each other in the end. So it's a beautiful film, and I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. It's called The Impossible, with Ewan McGregor, Naomi Watts, and Mr. Spider-Man himself, Tom Holland. And number three, I have Into the Storm. Love this film. Like I said in my review of Twisters, it's kind of in the group of that found footage style film. It is about a town called Silverton that is at the epicenter of like the historical strongest tornado ever possible. It's got quite a familiar cast as well. Nathan Kress, who you probably remember as Freddy from iCarly's in it. Sarah Wayne Callies, who plays Lori in the Walking Dead series, she's in there. Richard Armitage, who you Lord of the Rings fans might recognize him as one of the dwarves in the Hobbit movies. He is in there. And Matt Walsh, who is kind of that guy in Hollywood, he is in there also. Very awesome film. The story is not the greatest, but it's still really good. It's kind of in the vein of San Andreas, where you have this family and they're separated by this huge natural disaster, and they kind of have to fight through these tornadoes to find each other. For the most part, you're really watching this film for the amazing effects and kind of seeing these destructive tornadoes through kind of a first-person view. That's really the driving force of this film. It kind of leaves plot and character development at the door, but at the same time, it does try to do that. The dad kind of has a reawakening on what is important in life, which is his sons. But you're really watching this film for the experience and the fear and the destructiveness of these tornadoes. Now, still on the topic of tornadoes, at number 4, I have Twister, the original one from 1996. Fantastic film, love it. The effects are still great, which is really cool because if I remember right, Steven Spielberg's company, Amblin, helped produce Twister, and they also produced Twisters. So that was really cool to kind of get the same minds that gave us Twister also gave us Twister, so that's really cool. And number 5, The Perfect Storm. This is the one with Mark Wahlberg and George Clooney. Love this film. They are fishermen who get caught in this big, massive storm in the ocean, and based on a true story as well, just like The Impossible, about how these fishermen kind of face this huge force in the ocean as they're trying to make their way back home from their fishing adventure. Number 6, I have Armageddon. This is the Michael Bay film starring Bruce Willis, Ben Affleck, where they must drill into the meteor that's about to hit Earth and kind of save the world. It's got a very, very emotional scene in there when Bruce Willis, this spoils alert, but it's been out since '98, so I gotta imagine you've all seen this, where Bruce Willis basically makes the ultimate sacrifice and takes down this meteor by himself in order to save the Earth. It's really, really great film. Love it. Number 7, I have Don't Look Up. This is the one that Leonardo DiCaprio did for Netflix a few years ago with Jennifer Lawrence. I remember when I first watched this film, I wasn't a huge fan of it, but as I watched it over and over again, I started to see the power that is behind this movie. It's not necessarily about, we don't see, the event really. It's more about meteors, and we don't really see them a whole lot. It's more or less about the characters and how they react and all that. So that was a really cool side to see from a disaster movie. At number 8, I have Greenland. This is the Gerard Butler film, again, about the world ending with meteors coming down. A lot of these disaster movies are about meteors. That seems to be like a big thing in Hollywood was like meteor strikes. But this is a really good one. I love this one. Gerard Butler is really good in it. Marina Baccarin, who you probably recognize from the Deadpool films, she is really good in this as well. Another really great family movie. I kind of put this on the same vein as San Andreas. I like to do a double feature with those films. At number 9, I have The Day After Tomorrow. This is another one that I used to watch all the time when I was younger. It stars Dennis Quaid. Jake Gyllenhaal is my dude. Emma Roseman is in here. This is about the Ice Age coming to the 21st century. I haven't seen this one in a long time. I can't remember the last time I saw this, but I remember it not holding up as well. But it's a movie that really makes you think, like, what would happen if an ice age happened again? I mean, the effects were definitely early 2000s, so maybe that's part of it. You know, seeing it now in 2024 is probably going to be like, ooh, those special effects aren't the greatest. And I mean, the acting isn't the greatest either. It's your typical disaster film where you just kind of get a couple high caliber stars at the time and just kind of have them battle this disaster. But it's still worth a watch. It's not my favorite anymore, just because it's kind of aged poorly as far as, you know, story and acting and special effects, but it's still one that I'm looking forward to watching again after all these years. At number 10, I got Deep Impact. This is one I haven't seen in a long time, probably not since, I want to say 2005 or something like that. I haven't seen this film, so it's been a good 20 years almost. This one is, again, about another comet, you know, on a collision course to Earth. It's got Robert Duvall, Elijah Wood, Morgan Freeman, Tia Leone, just a high caliber. Jon Favreau's in there. Totally forgot he was in there. It's a really high caliber cast. I should really give this one a rewatch. But this one is at number 10 for me. Number 11, it's another Gerard Butler film called Geostorm. This one was a weird, very weird film to watch. It's about this machine that Gerard Butler apparently builds, and it creates weather storms. It sounds crazy when I say it, but it's actually not terrible. It's lower on my list because the acting isn't great. I mean, the special effects is pretty cool, but this was a wild movie. I remember when this was coming out, and a lot of the reviews are like, what is even happening in this film? It's a machine jettisoned into our atmosphere, and it generates weather systems. Like I said, I haven't seen this since it came out. When did this come out? 2017. I think I've only seen this a handful of times. But yeah, it's lower on my list just because it's kind of a wild movie and it just doesn't really work. If I want a Gerard Butler disaster film, I'm gonna go watch Greenland before I watch that one. So that's why it's kind of lower on my list. At number 12, I got Poseidon. This is another one. I used to watch this all the time when it was on FX. This is the Kurt Russell film where they're on this cruise liner. And a huge wave capsizes it in the ocean, and the entire movie, the cruise liner is flipped upside down, and it's slowly sinking into the ocean, and they got to find their way to climb up, or I guess climb down, but since it's flipped up, it's climb up in the ship this entire movie. I watched it all the time just because it was cool as a kid, but I have a feeling when I rewatch this again, it's not going to hold up very well, but I am curious to see. But it is lower on my list just because, you know, when you're looking at the rest of my list, it's definitely not on tier with, like, Twister or anything like that. But I am curious to see. Now, Pompey, I have this at number 13. I thought about putting it lower just because I wasn't really impressed with it. But when you hear my other two selections, you're going to know why it's not last. Now, Pompey, again, based on another true event. This has Mr. Jon Snow himself from Game of Thrones, Kit Harington. I've only seen this film once. It wasn't terrible. I mainly watched it just to see the chaos that unfolded as the volcano erupted. If you're not familiar with the story, Mount Vesuvius destroyed the city of Pompeii and left everybody kind of frozen in time, and you can go visit it today as well. I haven't been there myself, but that's what that story is. So it was really cool to see this kind of in live action and kind of what would have happened back then. But yeah, I wasn't really impressed with this. I wonder if they'll do this again in the near future. I mean, they have run out of ideas in Hollywood, so I wouldn't be surprised if we get another Pompey remake. Number 14, The Happening. You have probably heard this movie just take a lot of lot of crap from people, and rightfully so. This was not a good film, even though I'm a huge Mark Wahlberg believer. It's just not a great film. M. Night Shyamalan, I remember doing Cabin in the Woods last year for this podcast, and I've been really, really lukewarm on M. Night Shyamalan as a director and a writer. He has a new film titled Trap, which is coming out in a couple weeks. I am pretty curious to see that. I may end up doing that on this show. I haven't figured that out yet, but I will be probably seeing it in theaters. But this is definitely one of the worst films I've ever seen, aside from the one that I'm going to talk about next. But yeah, this one is about this weird infection caused by nature that forces people to commit suicide. It's just one of the most bizarre and dumbest plots I've ever seen. Mark Wahlberg is actually pretty terrible acting-wise in this, along with Zooey Deschanel, and I love John Leguizamo, but he's not even that great either. Wow, Spencer Breslin was in this. Totally forgot about that. But yeah, this just was not a great film, and it, like I said, one of the worst films I've ever seen from one of my least favorite directors. And then at number 15 is 2012. Now, if you remember the year 2012, that was a crazy year. I remember doing my high school English project on this whole thing. So back in 2012, that was when, the Mayan calendar was supposedly going to end. Well, it didn't end because here I am talking to you in 2024. They did a movie on it, of course, because it was such a polarizing topic to discuss in 2012. This stars John Cusack, who is notorious for starring in crappy movies, such as 2012. Yeah, Jesus, they wasted Woody Harrelson's time for this too. And Thandie Newton. That's a shame. Yeah, this was not a good movie. Definitely bottom of my list is one of the worst movies as well. I haven't seen it since it came out just because it was so bad. But yeah, so that is my top 15 for natural disasters. Now the question is, where do I put Twisters at? So looking at the list, it's not better than San Andreas, not The Impossible, not Into the Storm, Twister, The Perfect Storm, and Armageddon. That's kind of where I'm leaning towards here. I think it's not. I'm not gonna put it. Definitely not gonna put it above Into the Storm. Is it better than This is tough. Do I put it above or below Twisters? Well, I guess this kind of goes into what I was going to talk about next, but I guess I should just talk about it now. Twister versus Twisters. This is where it's going to go. I think I'm going to put it below Twister just because Twister is such an iconic, not just an iconic Storm movie, but just a movie in general that everybody, grew up watching. And with Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt, I think if I had to choose, I think I would choose Twister over Twisters. Now, it's not by a huge margin because I did really, really enjoy Twisters. It's just you have scenes like the movie, the drive-in theater movie. You have, everything with Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt and kind of like their whole character relationship and how they try to reconcile and kind of find each other again through this natural disaster. The effects still really, really hold up. I watched Twister kind of in preparation for Twisters and this podcast, and it still holds up, story-wise and effects-wise. So I'm going to put it as the new number 5. So the new number 5 will be Twisters, right below Twister. So I guess in the big argument of Twister or Twisters, I'm going to put Twister on top, but it is very, very close. I have Twister at 8 stars out of 10. I think I'm going to put Twisters at 7 stars out of 10, but I could be persuaded to do 7.5. I don't normally do half stars, but for this instance, I'm willing to kind of give it a half star just because I did really, really like the special effects on it. So kind of going through the top 5 here, we got San Andreas, The Impossible, Into the Storm, Twister, and then Twisters rounding out the top 5 in my natural disasters. I'll post this on the Twitter, aka X profile. You can also find it on IMDb. If you go on there, you can look under Cinematic Reviews, and I have all of my ranking lists there. But I will be posting it, this natural disaster ranking, on the Twitter/X profile. Just search Cinematic Reviews, and you can find that there. Well, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Cinematic Reviews. Next week, I'm going to be doing a special Marvel-themed episode with Deadpool and Wolverine being the feature film of the week. That will come out in theaters worldwide this Friday, so go ahead and check that out this weekend, and then join me next week for my thoughts. And surprise, surprise, I'll be having a couple of special guests on the show as well for the first time on this podcast. So feel free to join us next week when we talk about our experience with Deadpool and Wolverine and our love of Marvel and the previous 2 Deadpool films, which were done by Fox. So until next week, stay safe out there and enjoy the rest of this week. Later, guys.